Hey everyone, how's it going? Today I'm going to show you one of the most effective, more advanced Python tutorials for absolute beginners. So if you've already watched my other video of learning Python in 23 minutes, this is the next one that you should watch. It is how to make a more advanced AI chatbot with Python and making it super simple. We're going to be using one of these third-party leading AI providers, and we're going to build a full chatbot that you're actually going to be able to use. But don't worry, again, like the other video, I want you to pause right now if you're on your phone or on your laptop and go to a browser and open up Google Colab or colab.research.google.com. This is where I'm going to show you step by step exactly how you can build this advanced AI chatbot, and we're going to take hardly any time. So stay tuned and watch step by step how you're able to create a very impressive chatbot in a very short period of time. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to collab.research.google.com, or you can search up Google Colab. This is the exact same step that we took in the last tutorial. You're then going to click New Notebook. And this, you can think of Google Colab like the Word or Google Docs, but for code. Where here we can give it a title like Advanced AI Chatbot. And here you can write all of your code and then run it very easily, clicking the play button. So we're gonna start off with something very simple, which is a comment. In my last video, I showed that if you write hashtag, just like you do in Twitter, this is how you do comments in Python. And I can write installing packages, which is what we're going to do now. So basically what this does is a comment. I can write anything here. I press run the code and nothing happens. Comments are just like notes to yourself. So that's the first step. And what we're going to do now is the way that you build really cool things in production and in real life is by standing on the shoulders of giants, meaning that you install software that other people have written and they've been nice enough to open source and provide openly for you to use. The way that we do that is here in Google Colab, we do an exclamation mark. This means that I don't want to run code. I actually want to run commands. And what I'm going to write is pip, P-I-P. This is the Python installer or package manager. And with pip is how we install other dependencies or packages from other people that we want to use. So I'm going to write pip install, and then I'm going to import three main packages. The first one is Flask. This is what's going to allow us to create a server. So for this AI chatbot, we're going to interact back and forth with this server. A server you can think of as a URL. Whenever you go to a website that's hosted as an API, basically a URL that serves you information. Next, in order to get this running in a URL that you can use, we're going to use a service called ngrok. And here for Python, it's py for Python, ngrok. And I'll be showing you in a bit what that is. And last but not least, we're going to use one of these leading AI providers. I personally very much like Mistral, and so I'm going to be installing Mistral AI, which will give us some really advanced AI functionality that we can use. So I'm now going to run this. You're going to see this running, and you're going to see all of this other software that people have reliably written getting installed so you can use yourself. This is how you can make some really impressive things. So if all complete, you'll see here it all success. If you're having some issues or red comments, it might be that you've written some of these out wrong. So what we're going to do next is, there we go. We've installed the packages. We're going to press the code button again, and that lets us create another container where we can write code. We can basically continue and break down our code into smaller chunks. So what I'm going to do for the next part is we've installed all these dependencies. Now we actually have to import them into our code, the same way that you might import a document. So I'm going to start off by writing import OS. OS is a package that's already included in Python that allows us to allows us to access the operating system. Next, as you can see here by the autocomplete already suggesting, we're going to import Flask. That is that server that I mentioned. It basically allows us to create a URL for our code. So when we go to that URL, our code is run. Next, we're going to import pygrok. So we do py-ngrok from py-ngrok, import ngrok. And last but not least, we're going to import Mistral AI. Actually, it's going to be from Mistral AI, import Mistral. So that is what we like to call the Mistral client. So if I run this, it should all run smooth. It's actually good practice to run it once in a while to make sure it's working. Cool. Now what you want to do next is you want to input the last import that we want to do is get pass. This will allow us to safely enter passwords and API keys. These are sensitive keys that we can create on separate websites, I'll show you, that allow us to access things securely. So I'm going to write from get pass, import get pass. So if I run this now, it should all run smoothly. Cool. Now for the last part of the imports, we're going to need to create two API keys. These are secure keys that give us access to other services. Think of it like a password, but for code. So what we're going to write is Mistral underscore API underscore key. And this is a variable. In our last tutorial, we said these are containers where we store things. And I'm going to write get pass. And I'm going to write, please enter your Mistral API key. What I'm going to do at the end is I'm going to copy this whole line. I'm going to paste it right underneath. And I'm going to write ngrok auth token. And I'm going to say, please enter your ngrok auth token. So there we go. That's pretty much all you have to do here. I'm going to press run. And now it's going to basically get pass basically asks me, what is your Mistral API key? And I can submit it here. And when I've done that, it'll then ask me for the next one. The way that you can create your Mistral API key is if you go to console.mistral.ai, or you go to Mistral AI, and you click here, and we go to log in. And I'm not going to show the next steps, but basically when you are logged in into your console, you can have a tab that says get API key, and it'll give you a string, basically a piece, some random characters that is basically like your password for this service. So you can enter it here. And there's a free tier that you can use in order to test this for free. So once you log in, you should be able to access that. I'm not going to show you here out of security, but what you can also do after that is create an account with ngrok. So ngrok is a service that allows us to tunnel URLs and make them publicly accessible. And so if you log in and create an account, it'll give you for free one access token. So basically what you want to do is now go to these two websites, create those auth tokens and API keys, and submit them here. And I'll see you once you've done that. Okay, cool. Now that you've created your API key, you should be ready for the next steps. We've imported everything, we've put them into here, and now we want to create a new code block. This is when we're going to get our hands dirty with actually creating a chatbot service. So the first thing I'm going to do is going to be create a variable called client. A client is just a way that we can interact with, for example, these AI models that Mistral provides. Mistral is one of these leading AI model providers. And I'm going to type in Mistral, which is what we imported here. And I'm going to write API underscore key equals API underscore key. And so what I'm doing here, actually, my bad, I'm going to grab this variable and put it here. So what I'm telling Mistral here is, hey, here I want to declare or create a variable where I want to start the communication with Mistral as an AI model, and here is my password so I can actually start interacting. So there is the instantiation, if we call it, of the Mistral client, if you want to be nice and technical. And next we're going to create our app, and it's as easy as doing this. App equals Flask. Then you put some brackets and you put underscore underscore name underscore underscore. This instantiates Flask and it creates a variable where we store our Flask app. So there you go. That's how you create an app. Last, this app is going to be hosted on what's called a port. And for the port right now, don't worry too much, but we're going to write port equals 8,000. Now, when you go to a website over a URL, what you're doing is you're calling an API. For example, you're calling Flask, and you're asking for certain code. And what comes back to you is called HTML. HTML is just basically a way of indicating what, when users call your code, what you want them to see. So I'm going to write HTML equals hello world. This is my cool chatbot. And that's all you have to write. And later we're going to be making this look a little bit more snazzy. But what's going to happen here is that there's no connection right now between your app and this text that we've just written. So what we're going to do is we're going to define a route. So if you go to Google, you know how there's google.com/search/images. How does that different code get run? Well, you define something called a route. So here we're going to do @app.route. And let's do /, which just means if you go to, for example, Google, this is google.com. Here, if you go to our app and you don't type anything after the /, it'll go and run this code. And as you've seen in our previous tutorial, we have something called functions in Python. So this just defines a snippet that we want to reuse. And the snippet that we want to reuse here is going to be called index. It's just the index, it's the main code that we want to run here. So we're going to write def, which is how we define a function in Python. We're going to call this function index. We're going to do the colon here. And you know that if you define a function, you have to do 2 spaces after. And that's how it knows what's inside of this function. And we're going to do something called return render template. And we're going to render this HTML. Basically, it's saying when you go to / on our application, render or give me back this information. And what you'll see now is it's under yellow. It has a yellow underline because I haven't imported it properly here. And so there's a couple other things that I've actually forgotten to import here. And we're going to be importing request. We're going to be importing render template, string, and we're going to be importing JSONify. So what I've done here is you want to do these imports right here as a correction. And here you want to write render template string. So in a moment, I'll show you and this will be able to run. And it'll be quite cool for you to feel like you've actually created your first app and an AI chat app, which is quite an exciting thing to create as your first application. But as the last thing here, I'm going to write if underscore underscore name underscore underscore equals main, which, I mean, this is just a way overly complex way to say, if you're running this code, do this. And we're going to write, and just stay with me because this is going to be a little bit more complicated, but in 2 minutes you'll be able to run this. You want to write ngrok dot set auth token. So we want to set our password. We already did for Mistral up here to use AI. We haven't set it to be able to serve a URL. So we're going to write ngrok auth token. Then for the next one, we're going to write public URL, which is the URL we want to use, equals ngrok.connect port, as you see here. And we want to print here chatbot running at. And what you can do actually to put things together in terms of strings is you do a plus, and we're going to write public URL. So I'm going to copy this, and it's just going to put it right after here, and you'll see that in a second. And then lastly, we're going to run this app, and it's as easy as app.run port equals port. So if I now run this, which I'm going to do right here, you can see that I'm getting an error and it's not liking it. So the way that I actually combat this is it's saying, hey, this is a string type, if you've seen the last video, and this is a different type. So what we're going to do here is we're going to write str. We're going to put these in brackets here. And this is going to convert it to a string because it's saying, hey, I want to put these two things together, but they're completely different things. So this is a string, you make this a string, and that's how it can run. So I'm going to run that here. You're going to get here a warning, don't worry. And here is the URL that we're going to be able to click. And if we've done this correct, you will see the words that you've put here. So if I go to this URL, it's going to say visit site. This is normal. I click visit site, and it says internal server error. So that is a mistake, and it's saying render template string is not defined. And so what's happened here is that I haven't run this part when I imported it. So what I can do is, for example, I'm going to copy this over, and I'm going to put it at the top here, and I'm going to remove it from up here. So now if I stop this from running, if I run this again, and I click here, and I click visit site, hello world, this is my cool chatbot. There we go. It's running properly. So there we go. Hope you found this interesting so far. Now we're going to get into the really juicy stuff, which is, okay, I can access this website now. I can control what it says, but how do I get an AI chatbot that I can interact with? And I'll show you that in a second. But now you'll be saying, where does the AI part come in, right? We're using Mistral here, which is a leading AI provider. How do we actually get this to work? And so this isn't going to be just Python today. This is also going to be HTML, which is the language that websites, if you'll call it a language, are written in, as well as CSS, which is for styling, and you'll see that in a second, and JavaScript, which is basically the code that allows you to do things on websites. So to start off very simply, I'm going to delete all of this, and I'm going to do 3 quote marks. 3 quote marks allows us to make a very big piece of text that can span multiple lines, for example, like this. And if I write, hi, my cool website, it will still show. But the way that websites are structured is they use something called HTML. There's these things called tags. A tag you can think of as a bit of a container. And when I start a tag, so for example, I'll put HTML here. What I'm saying is this is the start of my website, and anything in between until I close this tag, which is basically these arrow signs with the tag, and then also this closing. This is how you close a tag. It means that anything inside of here is going to be things that are inside my website. So hi, this is my cool website. But it allows you to be able to create much more interesting components and not just text. And so what we're going to add here is these two HTML tags, an opening and a closing. And just bear with me, but we're going to add several other pieces. So we're going to add a title. The title is basically, do you see here on the tab it says Advanced AI Chatbot? That is what the title is. So we're going to add a title tag. I'm just going to make some space here, and I'm going to write Chatbot. And as you can see here in the autocomplete, it asks me to complete this tag. So here we've created the website. In the website, we have the title of the website. Next, what we're going to do is typically you add something called style. And the style tag lets you add colors, lets you basically have all of the formatting and branding. So we're going to leave it a little bit more empty here. But typically you use something called CSS, which allows you to change the styling and color. I'm just going to do something that you'll see later, but I'm going to write .user. I'm going to write an open brackets mark, and I'm going to write color is blue. I'm going to write a semicolon, and I'm going to close it. So all I'm going to do is this, and you'll see whenever I use this to style something, the color of the text is going to be blue. So I'll now go to the next part, and I'll define something called body. So body is the main part of the website, and I'll open the tag for the body and I'll close it here, just like this. Now for the body of the website, we want to add a container where all of these chat messages are going to happen, right? We want an input box to be able to write some messages, and we want some chat container. And so I'm going to write here div. Div is just a typical container. I'm going to write ID is chatbot, and this allows us to identify this so we can make sure we can insert messages in. And I'm going to open it and then close this div. And right now it's empty because there's no messages, but the idea is we're going to use JavaScript to insert messages into here. So there we go. The chat is section is written, and I'm going to do for the next one input, which is an input box where we can actually write stuff. ID equals input. This allows us to identify this input so we can take what you're writing. You can also write something like placeholder, which is like something, you know, when you have an input box and it says something in light gray there as a suggestion. So type a message, and then we're going to add a submit button here right next to it, and we're going to write button on click equals send, and exactly what they just put here in the autocomplete, we're going to write send. There we go. So that is pretty much all of the body. And what we're also going to write in here, lastly, is the actual code to make this all run, right? We haven't written anything to actually call the AI models. So we're going to write with script, and you open this tag, and we're going to do the same thing we did before where we close the tag. And here's where we're going to write JavaScript, which is the language that websites speak in when you interact with them. And so for our JavaScript, we're going to write a function. Functions in JavaScript are written differently from functions in Python. And the way you write in JavaScript is you write function, send. So this is what we're going to do when someone inserts text and sends it. So when you write in the input box a message for your chat service, this is the function that you want to call right after. And we're going to write some curly braces so we can define what goes inside of that function. So this is going to be completely different from Python. This is called JavaScript, and it's tricky, but you have to keep both languages different because they have a different syntax. They're written in a different way. So we're going to start off by writing const, which is the way that you declare a variable in JavaScript. and I'm going to write MSG for message. And for it, I'm going to write document dot get element by ID input dot value. What is this? This basically means I want to extract whatever you wrote in the message from the tag in the HTML here that has the ID input. What has the ID input? The input box. So it's basically saying extract whatever was written in the input box, and I want to put it into a variable called message. So next we write if there is no message, return. And basically what that means is if there is no message that was written, then forget about it, right? If you didn't write anything, let's not submit it. Next, we're going to write add, and I'll show you in a second that function that we're going to write. And you're going to write quote marks u, and this is when you're going to be able to speak, message, MSG, and then user. So here we have add, and we have 3 different arguments. We're sending you, the message, and the user. So we're adding basically your message to the chat. Next, what we're going to do is after you submit a message, we don't want that message to stay in the input box. So as you've seen here, what we're going to do is we're going to go to document.getElement by ID input. So again, what this did is it extracts the text you wrote in the input box. We do .value and we set it to nothing. So what we're saying is when you write in the input box after we've already added the message, just remove it, right? Because it's already in the chat. And last, what we're going to do here is we're going to write a function. We're going to set fetch. This means basically I want to fetch the messages or call a certain API. So we're going to be calling the AI model here. And we're going to do ./getResponse. We haven't written this yet, so I'll show you in a second. Comma method. And we're going to write post. A post method basically means just like a mailman, you're sending something, and so you're sending information. And we're going to write headers, and you don't have to worry about this, but it's basically the type of format that we want it in. And we're going to write content type is application/JSON. So there we go. That is pretty much it here. We have written all of this part. And lastly, we're going to write body is JSJSON, JSON dot stringify. Basically, this is just a formatting function. And we're going to write curly braces, message, :MSG. This line is probably very confusing. Don't worry, this is JavaScript. If you're interested in JavaScript, I'll do a whole other video. But we basically just wanted to have something nice to show on a website for you. So now I'm going to go to a new line, and I'm going to write .then. So what this means is, okay, what I've done here is I've called /getResponse, which is a method that we haven't written yet, but it's going to go right here. The slash goes to our website. The /getResponse calls our AI model, and it's going to be posting data along with it. What data is it going to post? It's going to post over this message that I just sent, and I wrote wrong here. And once that's sent, what do you do after? Once you've received a response, right? You're going to receive a response from the AI model. So what we want to do is we want to take this response, res, we do this arrow mark, and we say res.json, which basically means just the formatting I want to get right, and do .then data, and then you write, basically you've added the user message here before, now we want to add the bot message. So we do add, we write bot, we do data.response, and then we write bot. And that is pretty much it here for the code of this function. But we had this add function, right? And we haven't written that yet. So let's write function add. And what it's going to take is who is the sender, the message, and the client. And so here we basically wrote those three the same way that we're throwing these three arguments to it here. And so what we're going to write is const div. This is the container that contains all of the chat messages. And we're going to create a new message there. So we say create element div. So here you see in the autocomplete it's already written it. Feel free to use it, and you can use the autocomplete if you click tab. Then we're going to write div.className. We're going to write, next we're going to write div.textContent equals, and then I'm going to write here this little tick, message CLS. Next I'm going to write class name equals, and then here we have a dash, message, and then $CLS. So that's going to be the styling that we're going to apply to it. We're then going to be doing div.textContent. So this is the content of the message, where we're going to write that tick sign, the $sign. The $sign basically just allows us to insert variables, right? So here we have the sender, who is sending it, and then the message. So you'll recognize this when you see it in the actual code, in the actual website, but it's like you send this message, the bot sends this message. And then we're going to write two last lines, which is document.getElement by ID. You basically want to get the chat. And here we've written Chatbot. And next you say append child, which means I want to put inside of this chat a new message. And last here, document.getElement by ID, chatbot dot scroll top equals documents dot get element by ID chatbot dot scroll height. So there we go. That is all of the JavaScript and HTML you have to write. Apologies if that was a bit painful. It is hard learning coding, but look at the good part. You've now known how to use APIs, how to use Python, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So you're an absolute champ now. So this is the part of the website. And the last piece that we just have to define is the actual code for calling the AI model. And so the way that you do that is we'll zoom in here, but you define it the same way, where you do @app.route. Remember that we sent it to get response, so we do get response. That's what we did over here when we fetch get response. So we go to that URL route, we write something like definition get response, which is how we define functions in Python. We take the user input. So we write user input equals request.json.get message. Like this. So we basically take the user input. We then do try. Well, actually, I'll just leave it normal here. So I'll write response equals client.chat.complete, which basically calls the client, the Mistral client, which is what we defined up here. And we're going to call it using the model equals Mistral large latest, which is the largest and best model that Mistral has. And next we're going to write comma. We're going to press enter to do a new line. I can actually write this in a new line as well to make it a little bit cleaner. And I write messages. Here it's already completing it for me. Messages. And I can press a new line like this. I do curly braces. I write role. So this is the role. So I have the role of a user. And what content will this user send? This user will send the user input. Basically saying, AI model, I am a user, I want to send you the latest message. So here we go. That is basically all the lines in order to call the AI model. And what I'm going to do lastly here is I'm going to return JSONify. So this is just a way that I can properly format the response. And I'm going to do curly braces, response, and then you do response.choices. You pick the first choice. This is basically just the formatting of getting the actual message from the AI model. And you do message.content. This is just basically how we're supposed to access that message. So fingers crossed, this should mean that everything works properly. What we've done here is you've defined the AI model, you've written all of the website content here, you're serving that website content through this slash here, and this is how you're calling the AI model. You get the user input, you send it to you pick the model here, you tell it, hey, here is a user, they want a response to this message, and then you send it back. And lastly, what we want to do is we want to define here the method equals square quotes post. So we also want to declare it up here. So that should fix some of this. And the last thing here is that we actually need a curly bracket here. And we then just need a curly bracket at the end here as well. So we'll close that up. We'll run this. We'll go to the URL. We'll click visit site. We'll say, hi there. We'll send. And here it says, bot, how can I assist you today? And you saw that that blue that we wrote was CSS. And I say, tell me about London. And it might be writing a long message, so we'll just have to wait a bit. But you can equally write something like, as you can see here, it's wrote me a full message. London is the capital and largest city of England. And I say, write me a corporate email. And I can write it here, and it's going to take some time to be able to properly write it all. There's some advanced features that if you really want to get into this, you can, as you say here, sure, I'd be happy to write this. Dear team, I hope this email finds you well. And there you go. You've created your first AI advanced chatbot. You've learned Python. You've learned about APIs. You've learned about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. The world is yours now. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you want to make this even more advanced, I would suggest playing around with some of the other AI models. For this one, we used Mistral Large Latest. There's other models that are smaller and quicker, for example. And there's also ways that you can so-called stream the messages. So they don't come all at once, but you basically have it come word by word as it comes. You can also play around with the CSS, which is this part right here, and build it up to be a much nicer styling. But hope you enjoyed the video. Hope that provided value, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks a lot.